Right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Sci-Fi Chronicles again, where this week we're talking about another favourite of mine, which is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. So we're going to go round each of us, first of all, and just give us an initial verdict on what we think about Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. So firstly, with you, Gary. The Retro Doc, welcome back. Good to see you, mate.
Thank you. Great to be with you guys today.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade?
Better than the second. In some ways, not as good as the first. A lot of strong stuff. A lot of great sequences. A lot of things I wish they'd done a little bit less of. We'll kind of go into that, but. What I love about this film that I think it has over Raiders is, like, unlike Raiders, in this movie, there's a point to it beyond just the adventure. There's themes of, like, regrets and second chances that kind of culminate at the end. And that really kind of underscores everything, kind of elevates it. A bit. So no, it's great. It's one of the great 80s adventure films.
Yep, brilliant. And again, back with us, he's another legend, isn't he? It's the mega geek, Mr. Ian David Diaz. How you doing, mate? You all right?
I'm doing all right. All right. Yeah. Do you know what, right? Seriously, I think all three films should not be pit up against each other. And I'll tell you why. Mm-hmm. Because each film is different. Okay, the only constant in the three films is Indiana Jones, mm-hmm. and maybe Sala and what's his name?
Yeah.
So if you look at all three films, they're very different, right? So the first one, Raiders of the Lost Ark, it's about him finding the Ark. We learn about Indiana Jones. The second one is completely different from the first one, and the third one is completely different to the other two. So I think it's unfair to. I can judge it by entertainment, and I can tell you all three are entertained to the hilt.
Yeah,
the hilt.
I'll agree with you on that.
All three of them. And I think Gary is right as well. The third one concentrates on second chances and fatherhood and the relationship between him and his, Indiana Jones and his dad. There's the second one concentrates on the adventure and Indiana Jones learning about, it's not all about the goal. It's about humanity. It's about, survival. It's about doing what's right. And Raiders of the Lost Ark obviously follows that trend as well. And obviously it was the first introduction, but he's the titular hero, and it was all about finding the Ark and making sure the world was safe, right? So they're all very, very different movies. The only constant, again, is Indiana Jones, if you look at it carefully. For The Last Crusade, right? The Last Crusade is in my opinion, just as good as the other two. Yeah, and you people that hate Temple of Doom, you can go and kiss my ass, mate.
He's come out firing today. He really has. He's not.
That's just for short round.
That's right. Right. So the what you call it? Last Crusade is a fantastic film. Again, Spielberg knocks it out the park. The direction is brilliant. The story is entertaining. Yeah, I knew nothing about it going in. All I knew that Sean Connery was in it. Watched it, enjoyed every moment of it. Every moment. I'm talking about every moment of it. And I think it's a great movie. And I recommend it to anyone who hasn't seen it yet. So there you go.
Yeah.
Ian, I want to ask Ian, do you think that that idea about not pitting them against each other, do you think that's because the Indiana Jones, the first three, are kind of considered, at least in my mind, they were, but I agree with your point now. They're considered kind of like a trilogy, kind of like the Back to the Future trilogy or the original Star Wars trilogy. And so, when you think about, if you think of them as a trilogy, you're naturally like thinking of how they connect to each other and which ones are better, as opposed to thinking kind of like a James Bond thing. Like the first three James Bond weren't a trilogy. They were just like one in a series.
Yeah.
So then in that instance, you just think of them individually.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're saying that's what we should do with Indiana Jones, is just think of them individually.
Yeah, I mean, it's no point in thinking about why didn't Indiana Jones do this, or why didn't, you know, the biggest criticism of this one is Spielberg was trying to apologize for Temple of Doom. Again, I say to Spielberg, he doesn't need to apologize because that film was fucking awesome. But you know, they brought the Nazis back because they wanted to go back to the Raiders of the Lost Ark thing. They didn't want to go back to the Raiders of the Lost thing. The only reason why the Nazis there because they had to have villains to play against, and obviously it was set at the same time, and it was World War II, and it was all focusing on Indiana Jones and his dad to bring that relationship back to the way it should be. That's basically the core of.
Right.
I mean, the Crusade and the Water of Life and the Cup of the Covenant and all that. So not Cup of the Covenant. What am I talking about? The Holy Grail, the Holy Grail. Yeah, even that is all linked with everlasting life and you know what I mean, and stuff like that. So I think that all three of films are standalone films, and I think it's wrong to compare them. Because they're very different films. You know, it's not like James Bond where you see Goldfinger and then you watch Spy Love Me, and Spy Love Me is just basically Goldfinger. I mean, it's just Goldfinger, but different guys. Indiana Jones didn't do that with the first three. They were all very different films, like Dr. No, Russia with Love, and Goldfinger. They're all very different films. They don't try to copy each other. It's only when it went beyond the third one. And that's when it got right?
And you know, when you say beyond the third one, I mean you contrast that with the last one, which in my opinion is a complete monstrosity. This is very much, as you said, Ian, about fatherhood, and as you said, Gary, about regrets and second chances, and it was also about establishing that father and son bond where it happens in life where fathers and sons, they get to that point in life where they kind of go against each other.
Yeah. And
sometimes it can be a long time before you can reconcile those problems. In the latest iteration, or if they did Last Crusade today, they wouldn't fix that. That would be an insignificant part of the film. Whereas, as you were saying, Ian, it's central to this movie, isn't it?
It is.
This is what binds it. And I adore this film. I mean, I watched this one in the cinema. I must have this is what I always class as a kid as a summer popcorn movie for me. And I must have watched it about 3 or 4 times in the cinema because I just loved it. And it's what you're saying, Ian. From the first moment to the last, I was hooked on it. I was in the cinema and it just went like that. It went so quick because I was enjoying myself. I will also say the beginning scenes.
Yeah.
I also think River Phoenix plays it very, very well as a young Indiana Jones.
Well, him and Harrison Ford was in a film together, right? Before.
Yeah.
They were in Mosquito Coast, right? And he played his son.
Yeah.
So
because I know there was talk at the time, because we talked about it off recording, we talked about the Young Indiana Jones series, and there was talk at the time that they wanted River Phoenix potentially to do like indie movies, but as the Young Indiana Jones, sort of that early years thing, which would have been interesting with him as it. I do like he got the essence of Indiana Jones, because I love it when he comes out the cave and the first thing he says is, "Everyone's lost but me," which is great. But what I do love as well is it's not his dad that's his role model. It's this guy that is looking for lost treasure that's got the Indy hat on. Yeah. And I love that bit again where he puts the hat on him. Yeah. And it's, you lost today, kid, but it doesn't mean you have to like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's great that they don't even establish the year on screen until after when you first see the guy dressed like that, you think, oh, there's Indiana Jones. And then you have his scout buddy call him Indy, and then you realize what's going on, and then they do 1912. I think that was very clever.
They on the set, they had Harrison Ford on when they were shooting that scene, and Harrison Ford was telling River Phoenix, "This is how I would do it." So River Phoenix was just focusing on how Harrison Ford would do it, and then he would imitate Harrison Ford. So that's why he was so close to the way Harrison Ford is. So so that was a good move.
That was good, and I do like how Spielberg, they did the little like Easter egg things, like he does the whip with the lion, and it his chin to sort of show the Harrison scar and things like that.
It is a good film.
And even the transition of the hat, the head going down and then the head coming back up is very good.
I love the transitions. They got two good transitions in that film. One with the hat, and one where he climbs out the window and he's walking and he gets confronted by the three men behind him, and then he turns, and then suddenly he's in Donovan's place, and he turns around. And that's a good transition as well, cutting on a movement. I mean, I could talk about direction all day long, but this film, honestly, Spielberg's such a master, right? You don't even notice these things until you see it again and you realize what he's done. He's such an expert director.
Well, I mean, you've been teaching me, as we talked about some of the techniques that are used, and there's, like you were saying about the oneers and stuff, that he's used a few in this, isn't he?
Well, a lot. A lot. Yes, well, that's his trademark.
I said a few because I thought, I know at some point you'll give me a test, and I thought if I just limit it to a few, I'll get away with
it. He's a good director. I personally love this film. I think this film was great from start to finish. It's funny. It's fast moving. I think it. And you're led, because I never knew anything about it before I went to the cinema. You're led to believe that this is Indiana Jones's love interest. And halfway through, you find out that she's not. She's a bit of a slapper. She slept with both of them.
And that's great. That's a favorite scene.
Well, and I thought, I realized that, it's structured very well, because she's the one that goes down to the catacombs with him, and she fulfills that kind of de facto, for lack of a better term, kind of companion role, until the scene where he reunites with his dad, and then that role is no longer necessary. So that's where you find out that she's working for the Nazis. So they remove her from the companion role and slot the dad into that role right at the same time. And I thought that's very efficient scripting.
But jumping back to the beginning of the film, though, I do love the fact when he runs into his house, and you've got, Connery is his dad, or he's doing.
Well, that wasn't Connery, but
it wasn't Connery, but
no,
but he's doing the voiceover, isn't he? And it's like, well, I like the fact they're already setting it up where he's putting the diary together, which is nicely done. But like you say, the transition when they end up on the ship, I love all of that. The water coming in, and
you're not supposed to question the thing like, how the hell did he get back to shore?
I know. What? Exactly. Just
and to think, okay, well, even if you're in the water and floating, if you're only about 20 feet from a ship that blew up, you're not going to be totally fine.
What about so he goes, this belongs with you, and he goes, so do you, and he goes, throw him over the side. What was he worried about? If he was going to jump out anyway.
Exactly.
I will really quickly.
Just the hat remained at the end of
it. Back to the house scene.
The
way that they film it's like you see the handwriting there. And part of me, as I was sitting there going, just pan the camera over a little bit, and would we see him looking like he did in Goldfinger?
All right.
Would we see the young Sean Connery?
That'd be amazing. I love the scene where he's running, and because like Spielberg loves doing that. He likes to basically, Spielberg shows you what to see. So he has a shot of River Phoenix running, and the camera follows him. And no, before he gets to the house, it follows him. Then it stops at the mailbox where it says Jones on it, and it tracks right into Jones, and it's so you know where you are. Basically, this is his home. Do you know what I mean? So that's a great shot as well.
You're right. I do like it when he goes in the magic box.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
And then he opens the door. The other guy, and he sees River Phoenix running, doesn't he, along the track? And
but you do notice that he admires him, because he's
Yeah.
angry at first, and then as the camera pushes into
Yeah.
him, he kind of smiles because
Yeah.
maybe that was him when he was that age. I don't know.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's like, it all works very well, doesn't it? You know.
Yeah, it works great, and then we then end up back at the college.
Yeah.
And again, they didn't have that in Temple of Doom, and I do like the way they start that in Raiders, and they do it in Last Crusade as well. I do love it where it's kind of just goes back to he's a lecturer at this college, he's a teacher, and and you see a lot of them, apart from the ones that fancy him, they just think he's just this dull, boring professor, or doctor, and it's like, right, okay, they don't know anything else about what's going on. And I do love where he starts talking about X marks the spot.
The spot, yeah. The thing about Indiana Jones is, again, right, only reason why those scenes were in this was because they, the critics panned Temple of Doom, and Spielberg listened to all that shit and thought he did something wrong with Temple of Doom. And then obviously when they're writing the script, they obviously the thinking was, let's bring it back to Raiders of the Lost Ark. So even those scenes are welcome. I don't care what anyone says. I love those scenes where he climbs out the window and stuff like that, trying to avoid responsibility.
Definitely.
And it's great. And when he meets Donovan, who's played wonderfully by, I can't remember his name now,
Julian Glover.
Glover. It's a great scene as well. The way that scene is directed as well, it's pretty amazing. If you look carefully at that scene again, it's really, and also the scene when he goes back to his father's home, and his father's home's been ransacked.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a shot where he finds the what is it? No, he gets the thing that was delivered to him, the package.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Then he turns around and he looks at the picture of the knight, and it's from the picture, and it kind of slowly comes out, doesn't it? And you see Harrison Ford staring at the picture, and he says to Marcus, do you believe, Marcus? Do you believe the Grail exists? And he turns around and it's Marcus. So it's really well directed. That whole scene's so well directed. Again, when somebody says, "Oh, that director's really good," the question is he? Here's the question: is he? How do you know? How do you justify this?
I don't want to let the college scene go though without asking you two a question I was curious about. Now, it is a funny, well-directed scene where he escapes out the window. But then as I was rewatching it, I was thinking, okay, how does this guy keep his job? Because it's a funny scene to watch, but there's no way he'd be able to keep, escaping his responsibility to these students, by going off around the world on, I guess, like a weekend or whatever.
He's got tenure.
But okay. So I want to ask you though about his lecture scene.
Yeah.
Did that strike you as what he was telling the students? Was he telling them something that he knowingly didn't believe in himself? Because that's not what he does. The way that he thinks about archaeology, and archaeology is facts, it's not this. And yet, but he'll, at the slightest provocation, go off on a new adventure. And I thought, well, is there I'm trying to make this too deep, but like, is there a hypocrisy there with what he's telling the students?
I always thought, the number of times I've watched it, I've always thought about this scene, and I've always thought that it's his way of grounding them, of saying, because if you look at Indiana Jones, he is effectively, he knows the background, he studies, he makes sure he knows the source material before he goes out investigating and searching. And I think he's trying to teach them just to be grounded and say, right, make sure you do your research, then the rest goes from there. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And that scene you said as well, Ian, I do love it, because where Indy says to Marcus, he says, "Do you believe?" And then we get that first element again where they're talking about faith, which is quite prevalent in this movie. And
all three,
exactly. And I love how Marcus says, "I'm at that point in my life now where I'm prepared to take a few leaps of faith," and it's very well done. But you're right. The next scene where we get into Donovan's living room when the party's going on, and he shows him that shield marker. And again, I'm already excited as myself as a kid at this point, and every time I watch it. But as soon as we get to this, I'm like, we're off.
Do you know what? I can't tell you how many times I've watched this film. It's more than 100 times, right, in my lifetime. And every time I see it, I always notice things, a new thing. Like, for instance, there's this shot in it where Donovan's talking to Harrison Ford or Indiana Jones, and his wife comes in, and so the camera leaves Harrison Ford, and it focuses on Donovan and his wife, and then she says that you're neglecting your friends, and says, "I'll be with you in a minute," and she leaves, shuts the door, and the camera pulls out, and he's already on the tablet with the champagne doing the thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to me, that's beautiful directing, because you don't have to cut and see him, look at it and then, do the thing, whatever, and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all in one shot. So it's just economical way of actually moving the story forward, and less for the editor to do, obviously. So, you know what I mean? It's so beautifully directed. I cannot understate the mastery of this man, named Spielberg. Basically, he really is a masterful director. Him and Hitchcock and Richard Donner and all of them, they know their craft so well.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I agree with you. And again, I've said to you before, I think we were talking yesterday about Ian, and this is where get your thoughts on it, Gary. Many a time I've heard people say so and so is a great director.
Yeah.
And I said to you, I've thought about it before, but I think, but I can't honestly say why, if I think someone's a great director, why someone is a great director, which is why I'm going away and doing some research on it, because there's more to, like I said to you before, I joked, it's great color, it's there's so many different elements to it that, just watching a film, how many times have I watched this film over the years? But I couldn't tell you what makes Spielberg.
Well, the thing is, I think people judge a good director by the amount of entertainment they had from that film.
Yeah.
So if you watch Batman and and then you find out it's Tim Burton that directed it, you're like, well, Tim Burton's a great director because I enjoyed that movie. Do you know what I mean? But for me, as a filmmaker, I know there's more to directing than just enjoying the film. And I've only learned this recently, since the last 7 years, that I've learned about the true nature of directing. Do you know what I mean? It's fascinated me, and I'm really annoyed that I'm this age and I've just noticed it. I should have noticed it like 30 years ago. 30 years ago. Well, Spielberg noticed it when he was 27.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's got to jump on me.
Do you think that it's a dying art, though, that it's kind of, we're not going to see the likes of this again?
Because of the technology, and because you remember, right? You guys remember when they shot and film, a mag of film holds about 20 minutes, maybe even a bit longer. So you can only shoot 20 minutes at the time. But with digital, you can shoot like 2 hours without even breaking. You know what I mean? And you can see it right away. So that's grounds for laziness. That's grounds for just shooting as much as you can and hoping the actor gets it right. But where the professionalism comes into it is that only because you've only got 20 minutes on that film, everybody has to be on point, from the actors to the director to the producer to the props guy. Everyone knows that if you don't get in those 20 minutes, we're breaking out another role, and that costs more money. Do you know what I mean? So the discipline of filmmaking is disappearing because of the technology. And it's not... I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying it's a different way of filmmaking. I prefer the old school, being prepared rather than just saying, we'll get it because we've got loads of space on that disc. Do you know what I mean? That card,
whereas, like you say before, lock it into the 20 because we've only got 20.
And speaking as a film fan, Ian speaking as a fan and as a director himself, but just speaking as a fan, I think that the directors that I love are the ones who really create a world that I can completely immerse myself in, and it's consistent. It's a consistent world that I can kind of get lost in, that I'm not pulled out because of any anachronisms or because of stagey performances, like people standing there obviously waiting for their next line, like Ian's great example of, as the camera pans over to Julian Glover and his wife, and it pans back, we realize in an instant that there's something else going on at the time with Indy, and that makes sense. So we stay in the consistency of that world and shut everything out, and nothing pulls us out. I mean, to create that kind of that kind of world that is totally consistent and immersive for the audience in the narrative for like a couple hours, that's a gift. That's a skill.
It is. I mean, he's a master at doing it. Like, let's break that down, right? So not only does a masterful director like Spielberg shows you something within an unbroken shot, but he also tells you something about the character as well, right? So let's talk about that scene. So Julian Glover says to his wife, I'll be out in a minute. And as she shuts the doors and the camera pulls back, we see Indiana Jones with his back turned to Donovan with the champagne, taking the champagne and wiping it on the tablet, right? What does that say? It says that the man is obsessed with ideology. It says he doesn't even care about the champagne.
No.
All he cares about is what's on that tablet. Where did it come from? What does it mean? Do you know what I mean? All in that shot. That's
and
amazing.
He didn't ask for permission either. He just went for it. Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying.
It says everything about Indy. Yeah.
Direction is more than just pointing the camera and capturing a performance. It's about subconsciously telling the audience within a microsecond what kind of character that is. And when you watch, I hate to, I love talking about this subject. So stop me.
No. We'll go as long as we need to. We love it.
All right. So when you watch something like, this is the reason why I think old school directors are better than today's directors. Look at Alien Romulus. We know nothing about those characters, and we still don't know anything about those characters. We don't care about those characters, right? Imagine if Spielberg directed that film, we would have known about every one of those characters within the thing that he does while direct and what they say.
Do you guys think then as well, even if there was someone now, a new director that was doing it, they wouldn't be able to give you that description of a character just from the visual cue, visual look of what they're doing, because would they probably waste several scenes of writing about that character?
No. What do you call it? Who's the guy directed Scott Pilgrim? He's new, well, fairly new. He directs just as his direction's absolutely brilliant. If you watch Scott Pilgrim. Edgar Wright. If you watch, I adore Edgar Wright stuff. He does things. He's not as masterful as Spielberg, as in having everything in one shot sometimes. But he literally does things so the character, like that scene in Shaun of the Dead, where you have that first shot when he comes out to get the milk and he's passing everybody's passing his kids and stuff like that, and then it mirrors the shot where he comes out and everybody's zombies. Do you know what I mean? That tells you it doesn't have to say it in the script. It tells you subconsciously that the world has changed and he doesn't know it. So that's what I'm saying. With that is direction. That is Edgar Wright going, we need to do this to subconsciously or tell the audience without any dialogue that something has changed. And that, Edgar Wright's a brilliant director as far as I'm concerned as well. So the new ones do it if they are talented. But as I said, the guy who directed Alien Romulus, he can direct, but I don't rate him personally. But anyway, that's just my opinion. Please don't hate me for it. Just my opinion.
It's fine. Don't come after him, everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
We're well trained in martial combats.
Ian's totally right. It's like directors like Spielberg and you mentioned like Richard Donner and now Edgar Wright. Every shot needs to either advance the narrative or deepen your understanding of the context of the narrative in terms of characters or something like that. And I haven't seen Alien Romulus, but it seems like a lot of those characters would be they're not really characters in their own right. They're they're, you know, okay, they're victim number 1 or victim number 2.
Yeah,
you don't
that's
need
exactly
to know
what they
anything. They just need to function. They just need to fill the perfunctory plot point in terms, okay, every 15 minutes somebody dies. That's going to be these people, so we don't need to know about them.
Yeah.
I mean, just going forward on Last Crusade, the way they introduce Donovan as the villain, his back is turned to us. Do you know what I mean? Like any other director, which like he just walk through a door and go, "Hello, Indiana Jones, I'm the villain." Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's Spielberg who takes the film and keeps you from that information and shows you it when he's ready to show you it. Do you know what I mean? So he's well in control of that story narrative.
Well, I love that. You know, as they're about to get on the plane, it's like, don't trust
don't
anybody.
trust them.
Yeah,
and then
he says, "I told you not to trust anyone."
Yeah,
I mean,
didn't
that's
take
perfect.
my advice. Yeah, exactly. And there's many great scenes in this movie that I adore. One of my favorite is the library. You know, I adore that. And me and you geeked out when we went to Lichfield, didn't we, Ian?
Oh yeah,
we were in that cafe, and it looked like the library. So me and Ian were almost going to run off away from our tents at that point and go.
Got to find the X on the ground.
Yeah,
yeah, it's so funny.
And
but even that scene, right? I was about to say about Elsa. Even that scene with Elsa when. Sean Connery goes, "She's a Nazi," and then he goes, "What?"
Yeah,
he has that gun, and there's a shadow on the wall, and then even when he gets rid of the gun and he throws it across the table, it smashes those glasses and stuff. You know, very dramatic, very kind of, you know, a 40s ish kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? It all works very well. Spielberg's a master.
It's great, and I love that scene you talk about, and I'm sure you know you're the same, Gary, with it, but where they do that scene and basically he says, "Right, okay, how did you know she was a Nazi?" She talks in her sleep, you know, and then Harrison Ford looks at Sean Connery, and it's just straight away there's that little element of comedy in that serious scene, and those two.
And there's still the whole idea of like competition, like Indy. Well, I don't mean a double entendre here, but Indy kind of like measuring up because his dad is always kind of, Indy in his mind is always trailing behind his dad. You know, he's always trying to kind of live up.
Yeah.
But no, and then in the library, you know, the whole sequence in the tunnels, which is very well done, is very visceral with the rats and everything. I mean, you're there being just as squeamish and
something doesn't make any sense with that, though, does it? Like, for instance, he goes, "It's petroleum," and then he takes the stick and he wraps the thing around it.
Yeah.
Then he like, what are you doing, you idiot? You're going to blow everybody up.
I know.
Right.
Like, what?
Indy doesn't know that gasoline has fumes, I guess.
Exactly.
and also, like me as well, I always thought to myself, even as a kid, I thought, how does he survive by just going in the coffin?
Well,
surely he'd be fried,
exactly,
you know.
Exactly.
But
at least they have the ADR line with the air pocket, you know, for the audience to kind of know what's going on.
And you know, later on when he's explaining this to his dad about you know, and his dad is like, "Oh, I wish I was there," and he's all excited, and he said there are rats. And it's like you then also get a kind of link between the two where Indy, even though he hates certain things, he will go and look for what he wants, but you get the impression with his dad, if there's anything like that, he'll go, "No, I'm not going there. I'm just going to go back to my book, do my research." You know, it's great. I really enjoy it.
There's so many wonderful bits in this film. I remember I almost teared up because my dad did the same thing. So do you remember that bit where on the in the blimp and they're talking and he goes, "Well, you know, you pay more attention to dead people than your own son."
Yeah.
And he says to him, "Okay, well, I'm here now. What do you want to talk about?"
Yeah.
And then Harrison Ford's just looking at him and he's like, "Well," do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's exactly what my dad did to me. Because I remember I said to my dad, "You know, like, you were never there. Do you know, we never had a conversation or anything." Oh, somebody scored, by the way. That's my dad shouting. But anyway, I said to my dad, you've never been there. And my dad goes, okay, well, I'm here now. Well, talk to me.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what to say to him, and I almost teared up when that was in the film. I'm assuming everybody goes through that, especially when you've got strict dad.
I was kind of waiting for Indy to say, well, it's not the point about having a conversation now. It's the fact that we never did it when it mattered.
It's like my dad. My dad was a lovely dad, and he wasn't necessarily strict. He was strict when he needed to be.
Yeah.
But it was also the fact that like you say, in those scenes, there were some days where I wanted to speak to him, and he'd give me the time, and then I would literally go blank. And then it's like that he was always 2 steps ahead of me. I always found, he kind of knew what I was going to do next. So again, it's another scene that nails it. And I think where I do like the boat chase in Venice. I think that
was shot in two locations. You do realize that, don't you?
2.
So basically, they get onto the boats when they're actually in Venice. And then as they happen to chase, they're in England. Because you notice the different sky. So when they're in Venice, it's all blue sky. And as they're being chased, it's all dull. We're talking about London here.
Wow,
do you know what I mean?
okay.
So they shot all that stuff in London. And then when they go, obviously when they make up, don't they, him and the other guy, and they go back to the jetty, wherever it is, they're back in Venice.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? James Bond used to do that all the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
James Bond would do hovercrafts, in and around the streets as the pigeons did double takes.
Yeah.
Go between them? Are you crazy?
Yeah, you're crazy. Yeah. That was all shot in England. That was all shot. I can't remember, Southport or something like that they shot that in. But another thing that almost made me cry. Well, it didn't make me cry, but it made me well up. It's the same thing with my dad used to. If I disrespected something, he used to hit me. And then there's that scene in it where he says, Jesus Christ, and he slaps him and he says, that's for blasphemy. Yeah. My dad used to do that. Well, my dad wasn't mean. I don't want to give the wrong impression about my dad.
Discipline.
But he demanded respect, and you have to have respect for your elders, which is kind of lacking in today's kind of kids.
Absolutely, yeah.
But even that quick scene tells you something about his
their
dad
relationship,
and about not only the relationship, but what his dad holds important in life.
Yes.
Yeah.
That he wouldn't even tolerate that. It's like everything is, as you said, Ian, everything adds to it.
Yeah.
Well, again, I mean, when you talk about the other films and you link in his dad from the very, very first scenes where he's, in his study and he's doing his research for the diary, straight away. And then when it cuts to his house where it's been ransacked and he's got all the pictures on the walls, his dad 100% believes.
Well, obsessed.
Yeah,
his dad was
exactly.
obsessed because everything in that house was to do with the Grail.
So he has faith 100% that exists. That's real. That all of that Christian belief, it's there. Indy, we've talked about, from Temple of Doom to Raiders of the Lost Ark, he's a developing character on that faith.
Yeah.
And I think this is where the film at the end, where he takes that leap of faith.
Yeah.
Because he has to.
Yeah.
This is where he has reached that point in his journey where he believes as well. And this is why I always say there shouldn't have been 2 others after it. I don't see them afterwards because this film is the completion of that journey. He believes now it's not about fortune and glory, and it's the perfect ride off into the sunset at the end.
Also, the best Indiana Jones films was the 3, and all of them have one thing in common, which is faith.
Yeah.
Right. Temple of Doom has faith. The Kashara rocks, and what he believes in, what the village people believed in. Faith can conquer all if you believe strongly.
Not those village people, but the people in the village. Okay.
No, not them. But Raiders of the Lost Ark was about obviously the ultimate thing that God left and stuff like that, and ultimately destroyed the Nazis. And again, it's faith. Close your eyes. If you whatever. And then this one, as you mentioned, so that's what the 3 films had in common. When you look at the next one now, That was about aliens. So that didn't work.
Yeah.
The soul of Indiana Jones, the films, wasn't there anymore.
Right.
And don't even talk to me about the last one. That last one, because again, you know, Hollywood's trying to get rid of the wholesome family, the good dads,
exactly.
the faith.
It was about aliens and refrigerators.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. We bypass those.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so we then go to Austria, you know, and you've talked about these scenes, and again, it's superb. I don't know what you guys think, but you know, you've had that bit, like you say, where he meets his dad, and a favorite for me is when they have the argument and he shoots the Nazis. Don't call me Junior.
Yeah.
And then he's taking him out, and he's like, "Look what you did."
Yeah. It is a brilliant scene. And also, you know, again, right, it just goes to show that Spielberg's such a master. You know, in the 40s and the 50s films, it was all about light and shadow. And when the first time he meets his dad, the first time you see Sean Connery, you just see the jar go up, don't you, with his hand, and then the shadow, and he smashes it over his head, and then you're introduced to Sean Connery as he comes into frame. It's not like he turns around and he's like, "Oh, Junior." It's a dramatic, you know, coming into frame. You know, Junior. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's so well done. You know,
and also, I know, and also, I also love it where he goes about he thinks he's talking about him, but he's talking about the vase.
The vase.
It's a fake, and he just throws it.
Yeah. It is good. And also, another thing I'd like to just mention as well about things that characters do, so you can subconsciously know who they are. When Indiana Jones catches up with Elsa, when they're burning the books, and he takes the diary off her, and he says, all I have to do is squeeze. And she says, all I have to do is scream. But Indiana Jones didn't kill her. He could have easily killed her and then not worry about her at all, but just goes to show who he is as a person.
I know we're kind of skipping around, so I do want to comment about the Elsa character, who I think is a fascinating character, because you think at the beginning, okay, you know, she's the gorgeous woman who, you know, kind of goes along with him, and then you find out, well, okay, she's a turncoat, but the scene, I think her most important scene character-wise is at that rally. The look on her face as she's watching them burn the books is like everything that totally, as a viewer, it totally twists your idea about who she is, that she's still capable of being so affected by that and sees the tragedy of what's going on. And in some ways, and then at the end, we'll get to the ending, but it's clear that she knows what she's doing when she grabs the wrong cup. And I just think that but yet she's human enough at the end to still be driven by that kind of mania to find the Grail and everything. So I think that she's a much more interesting character than she needed to be for that role, if you know what I mean. It's like she could have filled the functions of that role without adding all the nuances, which really kind of add to the depth of her character.
She's a very complex character, though. She knows what's right, but she's not taking the right path, and she's been corrupted by the Nazis via the fortune and glory thing, which mirrors what Indiana Jones was when he first started the missions, which is Temple of Doom. She concentrated more on that than what the right thing to do is. And you're right, because like when she's watching them burning the books, she's not happy at all. She's like got a tear in her eye, and she's like, this is a tragedy. You can tell without dialogue, you can tell all of that within her face. Do you know what I mean? So she's a bit of a complex character, which is good. In other words, what I'm saying is that if it was today, there'd be like all this dialogue about how she thinks life is blah, 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 whatever. But they just show you her character, and subconsciously you read it. Therefore, you get slightly closer to that character. Do you know what I mean? So that's the beauty of writing and directing, I guess. You can just get closer and tell the audience what they need to know, you know? So anyway.
Absolutely.
And also, you know, we were talking about the, you know, the canal scene. the whole like boat chopping thing on the propeller.
Yeah.
Really well done. I think that's for me like the second best kind of action scene in the movie, only because it was so, you hadn't seen anything like that.
Yeah.
It was really very well done, even if it was done in England.
Yeah, it was done. It was done in England.
It was very well done.
Yeah. That guy, right, that played that character. Me and John know him from the guy from Mind Your Language. Do you remember that show, Mind Your Language?
Yeah,
he used to be in that show, didn't he? So
he did.
So yeah. So we know him from that, but Americans obviously don't know who he is. Alexei Sayle was in it as well. Do you remember?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the king, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yes, he was. Yeah.
I missed him. I saw in the end credits, what he was. I guess he was the Sultan.
Yeah, he was.
I guess, but I didn't notice him. I didn't know that right away that was the
Alexei
that
Sayle.
was during that scene.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say about the Sean Connery though, Sean Connery being who he is, and all of us as like film fans, when Sean Connery comes on, just because of the fact that Sean Connery, you immediately as viewers invest him with the power, the authority, even if the character he's playing hasn't shown us that yet. Just by virtue of the fact that it's Sean Connery, we put all that on him. But then later on, with the example that Ian was given, where Indy guns down the Nazis, and his dad goes, "Look at that! Look what you did!" And then you realize this is an academic who has like no real world experience,
more or less,
because Indy is the one which, even if he doesn't see it, Indy is the one that kind of like tops his dad in that, because Indy has the knowledge and the practical experience, but like I said, there's that disconnect because, we think, well, it's Sean Connery. There's nothing he doesn't know. There's nothing he can't do, because it's Sean Connery after all. And you kind of have to, at least for me, I had to work to see that character as just the character and not as Sean Connery as the character.
Yeah. No, because Sean Connery brings, because like that's the beauty of casting, especially in the 80s and the 90s and even beyond that, the 50s and the 40s, when actors was under contract, that people know them from another movie, so they bring baggage to the film. So when you see Sean Connery, you really immediately warm to him, because he's never really played a villain that you can remember. He has played villains, but you can never remember. You always remember Bond. You always remember him in Untouchables as someone that's righteous. So when he appears, subconsciously you welcome him. Do you know what I mean? And that's the beauty of casting. So Sean Connery, and you're absolutely right, Gary. He doesn't have the real world experience behind him, because he's been buried in his books for so long, isn't he, about the Grail? So, and they're very different as well. Indiana Jones has what his dad has, but he'd rather go out there, get himself dirtied up to bring back, something that's of worth, So
I mean, you're right. I mean, the lovely scene where the Nazis walk in, and he's like, "You dolt! Did you think my son would bring the diary here? You did.
Should have mailed it to the Marx Brothers.
I came here to save you, Dad.
Right.
Yeah. Well, who's going to save you, Junior?"
But the lines are so. They're classic lines. I mean, people quote them all the time. It's like somebody was talking about films that have survived throughout the years, and believe it or not, there's a lot of successful films that nobody thinks of anymore, like Slumdog Millionaire. Nobody thinks of that anymore. Do you know what I mean? You're like, it was good when it appeared. It was a fun film. But nobody thinks of it like Casablanca. How many years has Casablanca been made? And people still think about it today. It's the same thing with the Indiana Jones films as well. Everybody thinks about those films.
And, I just realized that whole prologue scene, in a way, kind of told us about the relationship with the characters, because while young Indy is out having this adventure and improvising his way and, escaping those guys, what's the dad doing? He's sitting at home writing in his book.
Yeah.
And that same thing carries over to when they're adults.
Yeah. I mean, you again get, we were saying about, you get to the scene where Donovan is there and he says he didn't take my advice. And I love it where he's torn out parts of the diary and given it to Marcus, and he does that brilliant speech. He's going, he speaks a dozen languages. By any luck, he's got the Grail already. And then it cuts, doesn't it? And he's like, "Does anyone speak English?"
But the thing is, though, they literally changed his character, though, because in Raiders of the Lost Ark, he was very much straight, knew his beans, and very much academic, whatever.
Yeah.
But in this one, he was a bumbling buffoon, wasn't he?
I know. I mean, to me, he acts like he's drunk the entire time.
Yeah, it does a bit. But it was done for comedy, I guess, purposes. And in this one, you know what I mean? Marcus Brody gets lost in his own museum, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, to hell, you must be really stupid. I said you don't get that in Raiders of the Lost Ark at all, do you?
But I do think Marcus and Salah, they work very well as a double, actually.
They do, yeah, they do.
You know,
they do.
He's got the paper up, run.
Yes. Yeah. But there's loads of scenes cut out of that sequence. Apparently, Salah grabs a what is it? What are those things called? With the humps. And he makes it spit at one of the guards or something like that. They cut that scene out and stuff like that. So yeah, but again, right? Every scene, as far as I'm concerned, is iconic. The bit where he tries to burn the ropes, the whole place catches fire. You know, and that wonderful scene with the turning thing where he turns and then you hear the sound effects, and then as Sean Connery comes around, and it's just him, isn't it? It's very funny.
Oh yeah,
it's very, very funny. So
it's great. And you know, I was going to bring this up as well because these films, for me, being into computer games growing up, if ever Indiana Jones was slapped on anything, I got the game.
Right.
I loved it so much. And I talked to you guys before about the fact that Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis on Amiga was a favorite of mine.
Yeah.
But the latest game that's coming out from Xbox, I'm put off now because they put an announcement out a couple of weeks ago, and they said they're not gonna get him to use his gun much.
Yeah, I know.
You know, and I was like, well, you know, you've just unsold a product to me then, basically. You know,
it's stupid.
So frustrating. You know, it really is ridiculous. So, you know, all we want is a good indie game, and you're altering it already. So,
but look at the parallel in the scene in Last Crusade where they're burning the books. So basically, the Nazis didn't want history. They wanted to eradicate history. So they got all these books and they started burning it. And see what they're doing now. It's the same thing. They're taking what we like and altering it in their likeness. So this new Indiana Jones film that's coming out, apparently the woman is an equal to him.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? So literally taking away who Indiana Jones really is. Yeah. So this is a different way of burning books.
And yet they fail every single time, you know. So what does that tell you about how successful they are?
Well, I don't know. I wish it would stop.
Exactly right. You know, hopefully one day the world will see common sense again. But I mean, back in also to the scene in Austria, I love it where she kisses Indy and she's talking, and like his dad is Sean Connery.
Oh yeah.
It was kind of wonderful, you know, and it's played brilliant in his. You see Indy turn around and look at him, and then I love the bit where this is how we say goodbye in Germany.
Yeah.
He just punches him in the face, doesn't he?
But the question is, why didn't they leave a guard with them?
I know.
He just left them in the room, and both of them, so they can escape.
That's from the whole. Let me lay out my entire diabolical plan to you, Mr. Bond, so that and that leave you in the cell by yourself. Type of storytelling.
But but the thing is, though, it was following what they used to do in the 40s. In the in the serials. So they used to do that all the time. So it's James Bond was the first one to do that kind of stuff, and obviously people take the mickey out of it. I don't mind any of this stuff. When we were talking about how Harrison Ford how Indiana Jones can keep his job by skipping, like what he did in this film.
Yeah.
That's all by the by. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's part of
Just enjoyment.
the structure of what Indiana Jones is. Yeah. In real life, he probably would have been fired. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But this is not real life. It's a hyper version of reality, which is a movie. So
Yeah.
we accept it. It's just a gag, right? So we
And-
accept it,
And you know what I love about the characterization here as well? When they're tied up on the chairs and he gets
Yeah.
the lighter out, his dad gets the lighter out,
Mm.
and his dad effectively he burns his finger, so it drops on the floor and the fire starts. But even in that, he's scared to tell his son that he's cocked up and the floor's on fire.
Yeah, that's right.
Even when he shoots on the plane and he shoots the wing, he says, "Oh, they got us." He doesn't admit that he's doing it. Oh, they got us.
It's
Going back to the college, I actually think I wonder now if there's a movie somewhere about Indy's secretary, like what she has to do, all the excuses she has to make when he disappears for a week at a
all
time,
the ghostwriting
during finals. It's like, what does she tell the administration about where he is? Oh, he'll be back. He'll be back.
But you know what, right? Just on a side note, when I was traveling to LA, I saw this short film. They played the short film on the plane, and it was called Happy Ever After. And so what the idea was that it's a romance film, and what happens at the end, the two characters get together, and then the music swells up, and that's meant to be the end of the movie. But what happens after that bit? And the short film was about that. So they get together in the airport and the music swells up and it's the end. And it's like, have you got any money to get a cab? No. So how are we going to get back? Do you know what I mean? So it was quite funny. So taken to what you said just now, would be nice to see a film with the secretary going, well, he's not here at the moment.
And I do love where they go to the fireplace and it spins round.
Oh yeah,
that's female Nazi notices him, smiles back, and then hello. And then they all start shooting. And then you've got Donovan in the car, isn't it? And he goes, "It looks like Nazi Germany has just declared war on the Jones boys."
But again, right? Do you not notice that scene? So basically, what happens is that Sean Connery throws the thing and he's trying to blow the thing out, and he says the floor's on fire, see, and the chair and everything's burning, right? And then we cut to the scene where Elsa's in the car and she lights her cigarette, which is a really good transition, and then the car drives off, and then you see Donovan coming. It's so well directed, it's so well edited and paced, and everything connects with everything, every shot connects with everything. It's just that probably Gary's going to go and watch it again and see these things that we talk about. But as I said, when I first saw it when I was young, I didn't notice those things. It's only 7 years ago I realized that great directors, great movies have these things. And the more you see it, the more you appreciate what filmmaking's all about. And that's what makes you love films even more than you do now. Sorry. I just went off.
No.
More than the rotating wall. Yeah. I loved the whole leaning in the chair and that spiral. It reveals the spiral staircase.
That's the transition between the two, isn't it? Where again, you start seeing that early stage where Indy's starting to it's building to that respect for his dad, because where Indy he's trying to figure it out. His dad goes, well, if I just sit down, I find things reveal themselves. And there's a lovely scene later on where he remembers the poem and he's doing that with the birds to take down the plane. And it's like those things, he's using his knowledge to solve a problem. Whereas Indy would shoot his way out of a problem.
Well, he didn't have any bullets in his gun, did he?
Yeah, exactly. So,
what am I going to do?
But that's the transition between the two, because he's going to his pistol. And his dad suddenly figures out, this poem is, I'm going to do this with the birds. And it solves the problem, but it's great. But when they escape, down that spiral staircase, I mean, there's what I love when they're on the bikes. Again, these two are just nailing it at this point, where literally there's the two bits where the Nazi cyclists are chasing them. And he goes round a corner and he knocks Sean Connery
Oh yeah, and it's
you know,
it's,
and he gets
yeah,
crotchety because his
yeah,
bag goes over the
yeah,
edge like
almost,
that,
yeah,
and I thought
yeah.
it's great. And
But
then
you know,
yeah,
that scene was the last thing they shot. So basically, they edited the film and they realized that they needed an action scene there.
yeah,
And so what they did is they brought them back and they went to the Skywalker Ranch and they shot it there.
brilliant.
So so just to save money, so they got Harrison Ford and Sean Connery back and they shot that scene there. But I love the scene where after the chase, he's driving and he looks at his dad for approvals. Like, in other words, what Indiana Jones saying to his dad, "Look what we did. This is
Yeah,
great, isn't it?" And he just looks at him and he starts winding his watch. He's like, you know what? None of that.
it's
None of
great,
that
isn't it?
impressed me. None of that
Yeah,
impressed me.
you're
That
right,
one look. Yeah.
because he's just put that in the wheel with the bike,
Yeah,
isn't he?
yeah,
And he's
yeah,
shot
yeah,
up in the air, and
yeah,
he's like, he smiles, doesn't he? And he's like,
yeah. And he just doesn't even care. So again, right? It's like really well directed, really great scenes. But I'm pretty sure the actors came up with that. Do you know what I mean? It's
yeah,
all a combination of all the bits that stick and becomes a great puzzle in the end. Becomes this really great thing.
yeah,
So, you know, hats off to all of them that was involved in this film, man.
And you know, we're talking about, you know, how he does a lot with a little, or how the dialogue says a lot with just a little.
Yeah.
The one thing though, and you know, we've been admiring that. The one thing that when I saw it, it's like, oh no, pause on this and do like 5 minutes on it. And you know that's never going to happen, but still, is when they're stopped at the crossroads and they start talking about his mom.
Yeah.
You know, and the tone instantly shifts.
Yeah.
And you could tell Indy's resentful. The dad is you know, at a loss and everything. And you thought, wow, you could unpack that for like 10 minutes.
yeah,
And of course they're not going to,
No.
but still, it's like that was the one bit of dialogue that I wish, you know, that you just kind of want to really dive into more.
No, I believe what they did was fine, because the question was, where was the mum? Like when you were watching it, it was like, well, where's his mum? And within that one dialogue, it explains exactly what happened. We don't know what she died of, but the lines are, what is it? I can't remember the line. Something
he
about
says, "Oh, she hid her illness from
yeah.
yeah, before
yeah.
it was too late," or something like that, wasn't it? He says,
Yeah, I know it's an obsession, Dad. I never understood
neither
it.
did
Neither
Mom.
did Mom. And he goes, "Oh, he did all too well."
And you can tell that that's maybe the source of his resentment for his dad. That right there.
That could be added to it. But then it gives you the gift to the audience. It's like what Tarantino said. He said that in Pulp Fiction, when they open the case, and there's that glow of light. Why would I show you what's in there? That's for the audience. That's for the audience. That's a gift to the audience, that they can think anything they want about that gift. And it's the same thing with this. This is old school writing. You know, you were so obsessed that you didn't notice Mum was, but he did. Do you know what I mean? But we don't know what she died of. But it does give us the information that he was so obsessed with his work that he neglected Mum. And as you say, Gary, maybe it was because of that he has a bit of resentment. But that's for us. We can make up something there.
Yeah,
do you know
absolutely.
what I mean? So yeah.
And I mean, and Gary, you're right about that scene, because also that sets the scenes for the final stages, where it talks about the traps to come and the challenges to come. And it says, you know, that lovely speech about it's not just a quest. If we fail, then the armies of darkness will walk across the earth. Yeah, which is great. And really sets the stakes at this point. And I love that, you know, in this kind of race, there's no prize for second place, you know, which is great. And then, you know, another favorite scene of mine is, I do love when they're in Berlin, jumping back to Berlin, where he backs into Hitler.
We know him as Mr. Bronson, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Over here, yeah.
We do.
The actor that
And,
played Hitler was Mr. Bronson in a children's show called Grange Hill, which was really popular over here.
I
He
just
played the
started flashing
headmaster.
on all of his Doctor Who appearances,
Yeah,
like
Yeah, he
Marvelous
was
Pyramids of
lovely.
Mars and.
Pyramids of Mars.
Yeah, he was.
So,
Yeah.
But all right,
so
I'm
it was
gonna
great.
be the contrarian one here because that scene. I mean, okay, if there's one element that I think that Spielberg over-egged a little bit was the comedy, that there was like a little bit too much comedy. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the character comedy between Indy and his dad, which actually serves to tell us about them. I'm talking about things like the plane in the tunnel,
Yeah.
as the guy's looking at it, which to me I thought was kind of out of 1941.
Yeah.
Spielberg did, even to some extent, the gulls on the beach to a small extent. But the thing with Hitler, it's like, wow, it's like of all the things to make kind of almost a light kind of, jokey moment. And I'm not saying that you have to drown in the oppressive reality of everything that Hitler was in the Nazis were. I'm not saying that, but part of me as I was watching it, I honestly just thought, wow, 4 years later, this is the guy then who's going to go the polar opposite direction and do Schindler's List. And there's none of that obviously in that movie. So I don't know. I wasn't even sure really how to react to the Hitler.
It's just that that we know that all three are not perfect movies. A lot of people would say they're perfect movies, but a lot of like jumping out of the plane in Temple of Doom was just stupid as far as I was concerned. It was meant to be a dumb joke. I mean, at the time it worked, but when I look back at it, I think they could have done without that. It's the same thing.
It did knock the movie. I'm not saying that it knocked the movie down.
No, it didn't
for me, but it was the one scene where I just was like, really?
No, well, no, I thought it was funny, but I agree with you with the bit. Why would the guy fly his plane into the tunnel? See, that's stupid, but that's played for a joke, right?
Yeah.
Well, you're flying around and you see them go into the tunnel. Doesn't it make sense to fly over the tunnel? Why would you fly into the tunnel?
Because it's
right.
setting
a joke, right?
Because you're right, because it's setting up the next joke. Because when Connery says, "Oh, you don't get closer than that," and then the torpedo, the missile hits the ground, doesn't it? And they land in it. Which
I mean, you could argue that he was going too fast and couldn't control it, but he was still stupid.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? But Indiana Jones films always have these goofy moments, which I think sometimes is unwarranted, but it doesn't spoil the film for me.
No, but I will say about that. My dad and my granddad, every time this film was ever on, they would laugh hysterically at those scenes. They would absolutely love those bits. And it's they just enjoyed every moment of it, just like what you were talking about earlier, Ian, where he shoots the back of the plane. He says, "They got us." They'd love all of that. It's just, but the scenes on the airship, when they're trying to escape Berlin, you've talked about that father and son scene, Ian, which is very good. But another bit of comedy is where he knocks out the Nazi and throws him off.
He throws him off,
and it's like no ticket.
No
and
ticket.
They're all
That
starting
was
to
great.
they're all trying.
That was great.
Yeah, it's. I mean, as I said, they got their goofy moments in there, and but overall, the movie is quite solid. All three movies are quite solid.
Absolutely.
But it's
and look, I get it. I mean, even saying what I just said, I get that it must have been irresistible to when they're filming it or even writing it to say, look, everybody associates Indiana Jones with fighting the Nazis. There's got to be a scene somewhere in these movies where
he meets Hitler.
yeah. I mean, that must have been irresistible.
Yeah. And also, if you look at that scene very carefully, it's not CGI people. It's real people. There's loads of people there.
Yeah,
you know what
exactly.
I mean? So it's those were the days, eh?
Absolutely. And did you either of you ever get the prop replica of the diary?
No,
years ago they did it beautifully.
Yeah, they still got it on sale.
Was that sold as a piece of merch?
Yeah,
The
it's
diary? Really? Wow.
yeah, you can buy a replica of the diary, and it's got every page in it.
Yeah, it looks
Wow.
great.
yeah,
It's really
yeah.
good.
So yeah, that's that. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, again, right? It is such a great movie. There's some really bad effects in there, like the what is it, the blue screen where they're in the plane. That's
Yeah.
really terrible.
I thought the
You know,
plane with the gulls when it hits the cliff and
yeah,
explodes. I thought
Yeah.
yeah,
that was
that was quite good.
Yeah.
That was quite good. Great. Was it Great Landing? Thanks.
Yeah.
It
Onto
comes
the
out
deck.
of that. Yeah. It's there's some really nice moments in there. Again, right. They pause for, I think it's about six minutes,
Yeah.
or maybe even more, with the father and son talkie scene, the bit where they meet Salah, and the bit where they discovered where they were going.
Yeah.
So that kind of slowed things down until the next big action sequence, which was
Yeah.
the tank sequence, which is bloody
that's the
awesome.
best sequence.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the best sequence in the
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah,
And
it is.
I love it where it's going from inside to outside,
Yeah.
and they rack up the tension.
Yeah.
And, and the
Brilliant
comedy.
stuff.
Really terrific stuff.
I love the dad. We're well out of range.
Yeah. Yeah. That can't belong to my brother-in-law.
Yeah.
And it's great because you think it's a fight in this relatively contained space, and yet it's so inventive. We keep seeing it goes from what's going on inside to outside. Indy's either on top, or he's fighting on the treads, or he's hanging, against
thing,
that the thing with the walls coming. You'd think, well, how many things can you do with fighting on a tank? But they really, that is a really, really well done, sustained sequence.
It is. It's very well directed, and it's got some classic lines in there. It's like, Jones is getting away, not that Jones, the other Jones, the other Jones. So great lines. And when Sean Connery comes down and they do that thing with the university thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so good. I mean, they obviously took the character of Henry Jones and made him a bit comedic. And Sean Connery played it very, very well, in my opinion. But
I mean, this scene as well, this is also where I talked earlier about the fact that Indy is starting to respect his dad more and how he does things. But you can see in this that he's starting to think like his son as well, because he ends up fighting, doesn't he, inside the tank?
Tries to reach for the gun, doesn't he?
And does
pen's mightier than the sword. That kind of thing.
That's something that I've come to realize, in our discussion here, is that, and again, this points out to Ian's admiration for the way that Spielberg has weaved all this stuff together, even if you don't notice it until multiple viewings, that throughout the film they're finding that they have more that ties them together than splits them apart. Whether it's the dad can be kind of ingenious, with the gulls, with the poetry, kind of helping out, or the fact that the feelings toward the mom still kind of ties them together. So it's about them reconnecting as they realize that they've always had those kind of connectors. Do you know what I mean? They just need to kind of realize that it's still there.
Well, I think they realized that they shouldn't have been, both of them shouldn't have been so stubborn. They should have basically met up a long time ago. That all that time that they've wasted by being stubborn was not worth it. And now they're together, they realize that they have wasted time.
Absolutely.
That's what I think they both realize. That tank chase, going back to the tank chase, that tank chase is brilliant, though, isn't it?
Great.
Another classic line is, "You call this archaeology?" I mean, come on, come on.
And I love, Marcus, how'd you get off? And he gets out.
Oh yeah, he gets smacked in the head, smacked in the face, and he falls off. And
then Indy's holding on to his dad with the whip, and he's getting punched in the kidneys constantly. And he's like, "I'm not letting go of my dad." And then Salah comes in and gets
He
him.
takes his hat off and goes, "Hello, Indy."
Yeah.
As he's riding the horse, he takes his hat off. It's so funny. But I'm just saying, right? Yeah, I mean, it's got to be a gift to marry those things together.
Yeah.
As I said, if it was any other director, just look at the last guy that directed the last one. No humor. It was just flat and awful and crap.
Yeah.
But when you look at the tank chase, you got humor, you got edge of your seat stuff, you got special effects, you got horse riding. All those things are married together within an explosive sequence.
Fantastic.
You know, it just goes to show the difference between Spielberg and the last guy that directed the last film. The last film was just ridiculously bad. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I said there were 3 of them. It was a trilogy, and you can't recreate the magic of those 3.
No.
That time is gone.
Yeah.
So I think this tank, going back to the tank scene as well, I love it when Indy's on the side of it and he's being dragged.
Yeah.
You know, and suddenly that bullet bounces around. And this is the thing.
Yeah.
When we were kids, right? You saw that in the cinemas. You saw like this film in particular, you saw the bullet and then the blood trickling down and coming out of his mouth. But then later on, you see the heads being decapitated and rolling back down, you know, so they don't hide any of that. They never did. And we didn't care about that.
No, but because kids love that stuff. They love that stuff, right? Anything. Look, the reason why good kids films work, and I'm not saying this is a kids film, it's a family film, is because kids love seeing something that they're not supposed to see. That's why during the 80s, when there was the explosion of VHS and tapes and stuff, used to go to the local video store, rent out, I don't know, zombie flesh eaters, and you're sitting there 2 o'clock in the night watching zombie flesh. It's the idea that you could watch something that you're not supposed to be watching.
Yeah.
And Spielberg played into that with Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
Big
definitely.
time, you know? And with this one to a certain degree. And Jaws. Because Jaws was an A over here. That should have been an AA.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I know.
Did they? But they must have chopped. They must have cut some scenes from that. Not even the leg scene.
No,
really. Wow.
I mean, I said this on a previous stream, and I was saying to Sarah, because Sarah watched Raiders in the early 90s, and they cut stuff out. But I said, you know, Jaws. I remember as a kid, summer holidays, they put it on the TV in the afternoon, and you'd see the leg drop to the bottom of the ocean. They didn't care about any of that scaring kids back then, you know. And I didn't get damaged because of it. You know,
no one did.
I did all right. Exactly. You know,
when we grew up, there was very little reports of kids going around schools shooting people. There was actually, it was never heard of until I don't know, till the 2000s. I think it started, right?
Exactly, and it's just, you know, I've never subscribed to the video or TV violence creates someone to go out and do it. It's not. That's the symptom of somebody that's got serious issues.
Yeah.
That are just and people are using that as an excuse to push an agenda. And I mean, going back to the tank chase, I mean, the fight on top is brilliant, but I do love it when they think he's gone over the top.
Oh yeah.
And then like he turns up and he can hardly stand. And his dad's like, "What are you sitting around there for?" You know.
No, but you're missing the scene, which is again right. If Gary watches this, he'll notice this as well. So the tank is moving, and Indiana Jones is on a horse, and he rides up against this ridge, and he jumps off the horse, and he falls onto the tank. He falls flat on his front, right? Yeah. And if it was any other director, he'll flatten his front, he'll stand up, the guy will climb out, and they'll start fighting. But this is how Spielberg does it. He jumps off the horse, he falls, and he falls flat on his front. He's on this front, he looks up, and then you see, what's his name's head come out of the thing like that.
Yeah.
And that's how we introduced them again. I mean, come on.
It's fantastic.
You could applaud. That's genius, well-directed stuff. Do you know what I mean? He again, it's very kind of cinematic, the way Spielberg approaches every scene, every transition, every cut. Do you know what I mean? Again, pure genius. What can I
Yeah,
say?
yeah,
And the way that ending plays out. I mean, obviously, when the tank goes over, we as an audience say, "Well, of course he's not dead," but they allow enough time for the other characters and his dad to think that he's dead, to not undercut that by when he goes, Marcus, I just should have said one more thing, had more time. He lets that breathe and not immediately undercut it to go to Indy kind of climbing over. I appreciated that. And also, I thought the kind of visual payoff for that scene is when they're looking over and Harrison Ford comes over and then positions himself and looks over the same way. I thought that was the kind of visual humor payoff for that scene where he's looking at it. It's like, oh, what are you looking at?
But also the bit that tells you that they're old, both of them are old fashioned, and they're still men, is when he goes, "I thought I lost you, boy," and he grabs him and he hugs him, and then Harrison Ford is like enjoying the hug. And then he suddenly straightens up right then, and he falls to the ground. Let's go, let's go. Right then, that's it. Let's go. Do you know what I mean? We're men. We don't do this thing.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? So that kind of thing. So again, that tells you about who they are within that movie as people.
And you know what? I saw a few weeks ago somebody put on Twitter.
Yeah,
they put on criticizing the effects of, because it's a toy going over in the tank, a toy character figure. And for me, I don't care about that because it's such a great film. I'm engaged all the way through it, and if you're looking at it and just going, that's a toy, then
somebody needs to explain.
You're missing out on how good this film is.
Well, somebody needs to explain suspension of disbelief to that person who posted that.
But it again, it's a film of its time. Do you know what I mean? I don't want them to go back and do that CGI.
No,
I don't want them to touch the film at all because leave the film. It's like basically trying to make Casablanca in color. Do you know what I mean? What's the point in that? So with this, even we do know it's a model. We do know they tried the best at that moment in time. And the bit that makes me laugh though is he's on the ground and he goes, "Come on then!" And somebody you can tell somebody from out of shot throws his hat in.
Oh yeah,
throws his hat towards him.
That's right.
Yeah, it's so funny. But it's hilarious, absolutely hilarious. But there you go.
It is great, and I think when you talk about Spielberg is superb and scenes that he's created. When Indy and that are on the horses, they first appear in the canyon of the crescent moon, and the lighting of that is superb, and it gives it this eerie sort of almost like a paranormal kind of feel to it. It's done so well, and of course, ever since this film, I've always read up about this place where it is in the world, and it's
Jordan, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And it's like you can't go in it. That's just it carved into the wall, isn't it? But it just looks great, and
it does.
It was also featured in Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger, I believe, as well.
You're right.
In that film.
You are. Yeah.
It's been too long since I've seen that one.
That's a great film.
Yeah. Well, we may end up talking about it.
I love the Golden Voyage of Sinbad.
Yeah,
but it's been a while since I've seen it. And about that shot, John, when they see the all the carvings and set in the wall. I mean, I was watching, I thought instantly you understand the appeal of that for these guys, about how something like that is, so you can understand how that just feeds their upset, because it looks great. It's like, wow, just as a viewer, I'd love to go in and explore that.
Exactly right. And but I'd send you on ahead because I'm not losing my head.
Oh, are you talking about inside or outside? I'm still outside. I'm still outside.
So Spielberg loves doing things where things line up in lines. Right, so I give an example. When in E.T., when the kids start flying at the ending, and the police is chasing them, they fly to the last destination. When they land, they all land in a line.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
as they're landing. Yeah,
and he did the same thing in this when they get caught, and they walk forward, and all the Germans are all in a line with the gun pointing at them.
Yeah,
so he likes doing symmetry as well with certain shots as well. He's done it in loads of films, actually, symmetry.
Yeah,
but yeah, so Gary, go back and watch it.
I love the fact that you're, I mean, that you, whether it's on your first view or your 50th view, that you're viewing it with eyes that I'm not. So I do love going back and looking at it.
Yeah, it's again, even when you watch Munich, the film he directed, Munich, which is brilliantly directed as well. He's a master of what he does. I mean, I think Hitchcock, obviously, I think he's slightly better than Hitchcock, because Hitchcock some of his stuff was hit and miss, but Hitchcock had that gift as well of seeing things differently, as well as Spielberg. So
yeah. And I think this bit as well, this is where, as I say, with Indy, where he's kind of goading Donovan to say, well, if you shoot me, you won't get what you want. And he's like, you're absolutely right. And it backfires on him when he shoots his dad.
Yeah.
And that scene is played brilliantly. Yeah. And where Indy shows that rage. Yeah. And then Donovan's like, you can't help him if you're dead. Only the Grail can save him now. And I love that we're at this point now where it's make or break for Indy. You're either going to believe now or you're not going to believe. When we get there, it's that perfect situation where it is literally the leap of faith.
Yeah.
And it's so well done. It's so well realized. But I love how he goes through it, and they've already set it up brilliantly. Spielberg set it up brilliantly with people's heads rolling back down the steps towards them, and he's got the diary now, and he's going to find his way through. And again, it's just so well done, isn't it? It just the tension in it. I remember sitting in the cinema and I was thinking, what is it in there? For the first time, I was like, is it some sort of monster or something? Because you don't know at that point, or you do, because the first scenes where the head's taken off, you don't actually see what it is, do you? Which gets the tension increased, doesn't it? So, and it cuts the sword as well. But then once you get in there, and it's like flipping out, and that's what I said, Gary. I get on with you really, really well, but in a situation like that, you're going in first, mate.
Well, I gotta say, the coldness of the Donovan character is great in this, because he's like, when Indy says, well, you kill me, and he's like, yeah, you're right, boom.
Yeah.
It's all about, okay, yeah, you're right, but it's like there's not even a thought. And then like when the head rolls down, what does he do? He turns to the other soldiers, he goes, okay, who's next?
Somebody else.
Man, this guy just is.
Yeah, he's he all he was looking for was the glory of actually getting the prize for Hitler, I guess. And if you look closely, he was all about the immortality. And Elsa was like Belloc, I guess, because she was after the prize, wasn't she? Of the
she never believed in it.
No, she never know. So I found that very interesting as well.
Yeah.
And also, I love the bit where he's like, only the penitent man would cross.
Yeah.
And Sean Connery saying it as well. And it's
and I do like the fact that that to me is a masterful sequence, because it allows the audience to figure it out at the same moment that Indy's figuring it out, because they give the clue, the dad repeats the clue, they have the breath of, you see the headless bodies there, so has something to do with being too tall and getting your head cut off, the penitent man, the breath, and then the wind's coming, so the audience figures it out simultaneously.
Well, I didn't.
No, but what I'm saying is like that allows that's just more audience investment, because the audience is figuring it out as Indy is. It's just gets you more into what's going on.
The penitent man kneels before God.
Yeah. And I love it when he falls through, because he gets Jehovah wrong.
The I begins with an I. Yeah.
And then, like I say, you get to the leap of faith, and I think from there, that whole element of when he gets through. I mean, he throws the gravel across, and they find their way.
Yeah.
That is obviously where he meets the knight, and the knight is so old he can't fight anymore. He's just knackered, basically. Which I have to say, when I was a kid, I actually thought that was Llewellyn who played Q in Bond.
Oh yeah,
I did, but it's not, is it?
No, it's
but
not.
I always thought as a kid, is that Q's playing that role?
Wanted Laurence Olivier to do that, didn't they? But he couldn't do it in the end.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, do you guys think or agree that Indy taking that step, that's his kind of last step on the journey to fully believe and having the faith.
I think he's different when he comes back from this. I think that's why it ends. Yeah.
Again, right. All three is about faith and about believing in something beyond logic, right?
Yeah.
To become an archaeologist, you have to use logic. You have to know about the digs, and you have to know about this, blah, blah, blah. But when it comes to Holy Grails and the Ark of the Covenant, it's beyond the logic of Earth.
Yeah.
So, and also the fact that his father believed in something beyond the logic as well. And that connects them both, don't it? That kind of faith connects them both. So he had to take a leap of faith to actually save his dad.
Yeah.
And once he took that leap of faith, it changed his life forever.
Yeah.
That's what I believe.
And I agree. And I think what also backs up that argument and why they shouldn't have done films after this, especially the one that was out last year, that film is basically showing you an Indy that's a broken man.
Yeah.
But as you come out of this, as soon as he comes back from this chamber, he believes, he has that faith. And it ends in Last Crusade with the ride off into the sunset. So the end of it. But a man who has now found that faith isn't going to be broken about losing his son at that point, because he knows he's going to see his son again, because he believes 100%.
It's just spitefulness from the filmmakers and the people and these crazy lefties that's in control of Hollywood now. It's just spitefulness that they want to tear everything down. That's beautiful. Again, I would say, even if you don't believe in God, and I'm a Christian, I believe the Christian idea is a beautiful thing. The core of it is beautiful. Obviously, you have people that will, manipulate it to their advantage, because people are people at the end of the day, humans are humans, and greed and all that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the core of it is about humanity, believing, love, all those good things.
Yeah.
And these people, I keep saying these people, they want to tear all that stuff down in movies, which is like burning books, right? Yeah. But that's what they're trying to do. And
to accomplish what they want to accomplish, they have to eliminate the cultural touchstones, which includes heroes, as you've said before.
And they want to eliminate the hero's journey as well. That's a big thing for them.
But I don't want to skip over the chamber sequence because it's too good. So,
I just want to say, Doc Brown is in the chamber sequence. I don't know if you noticed that Doc Brown's in it. You guys don't know what I'm talking about, do you?
No.
So when
you know what? I really hate it when you do this, mate.
No. It's a joke. It's a joke.
Yeah.
There's a flux capacitor mixed in.
No. So when Elsa gives him the cup and he drinks, and when he starts turning old, there's a point where he looks like Doc Brown. He looks like Doc Brown. Okay. I'm like, that's Doc Brown.
Well, like you said, before, clearly, Elsa. It's clear that she knows she's giving him the wrong chalice. That she knows he's going to think that, because he's all about the prize and he's not bringing the understanding to the choice of the chalices. She knows that he would buy that the most sparkly, ornate chalice with the rubies is the one, because he's not stopping and thinking about it. And you can tell on her face that she knows, as she looks at, as she watches him drink the drink, she knows. I mean, it's clear that she knows something will happen. I mean, she's still startled by what happens, but she knows that she is dooming him.
Yeah.
But she's all about getting the prize.
Yeah.
She doesn't
And-
believe in the Holy Grail, and she doesn't believe what the Nazis are after either. And she doesn't want him to take the prize, right? So that's why she gave it to him, so she can eliminate him,
Have
and
the
then they
glory
can
for
walk away
herself.
with the prize, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's basically what she wanted. That goes to show what kind of a character she is.
And
Not very
I
nice.
love the whole.
Yeah.
I just my favorite line in the whole movie. Again, you know, as a Christian, is the whole. This is the kind of cup that a carpenter would have used. That just to me is such the perfect line.
Yeah.
You know, and that whole sequence is great.
It's fantastic, and I think, like you say, I always to this day, and we were talking about it a few minutes ago about we saw it all as kids at that time, and we see this just like Raiders. We see this guy literally, you know, turn to dust in front of our eyes, and I love it. I still think it's brilliantly
and
done.
That wonderful shot where he slams against the wall, he crumbles. And then you have the dust, and the dust is coming off the Nazi badge.
Brilliant.
It's superb.
It is so good, and I like, you know, again, Indy believes 100% now. He believes in it. He's just seen this guy fade away in front of him in a very, very gruesome way.
Yeah,
but he does. He's like cup of the carpenter. He puts his faith in there, takes a drink, and he's fine. And then
before the knight says he chose.
He chose.
That was. That's a meme now, isn't it?
Yeah,
you know. And then after he saves his dad, you know, and then things start to
crumble.
You know, the whole thing about you know, and I think that's really well staged in terms of Elsa sliding to grab the thing, and it knocks into the cavern a little bit, and she's reaching for it, and that whole,
you know what happens, right? You know what happens? It's because the knight told Indy,
don't cross.
Don't cross the seal.
Don't cross the seal.
And the only way to have immortality is to stay there.
Yeah,
you know, if you left and crossed the seal, you're just going to get old again.
That's
so that was the question. I thought that as the movie. Well, I know we're skipping. Well, we don't have to skip to the end, but in this scene, aren't we to assume now that because both Indy and his dad have drunk from this, they're both immortal?
No, because they left the temple. Because
I thought it was you just can't take the Grail itself.
No. It's because the knight says that is the curse and the gift of immortality is to stay there.
And they set it up earlier in the film by the other two knights went back and died.
Yeah.
Oh, right. He stayed there and he lived forever. So, because I had this discussion with people when they said about the last film that they released, Disney, and people said, well, Indy's immortal, so why is he looking old? And I said, no, he's not immortal. You know, Last Crusade does establish it. So it's but I do like that bit where he's healing his dad, and I love the bit where it washes away the bullet wounds.
Yeah.
It's so well done.
And I love the fact that during that sequence, the dad actually gets to see the knight.
Yeah.
Because it's not that he has to rely just on Indy telling him, hey, I saw this immortal knight, the one you've been looking for your whole life. They do let the father get that sighting of it, so it validates it for him. But that whole idea of the whole kind of like, you know, let it go, you know, Indiana, let it go, because then that shows that, you know, that the dads realize that even something that's right there, which is the culmination of a lifetime of research and obsession, realizes that's not as important as family and friendship and stuff. And so the dad has his own epiphany, you know, which is great.
Well, he breaks Indiana Jones out of that spell, because Indiana Jones is like, I can almost reach it. And he says Indiana. It's the first time he says Indiana, because he calls him Junior most of the time.
Yeah.
And then that breaks him out of it. And in other words, what you're saying is, look, you know, son, I love you. Let it go, mate. Do you know what I mean? And you know, he's been respectful to his son probably for the first time in years. Do you know what I mean? And that's what breaks the spell.
Absolutely. And I think for me, I mean, I don't know about you guys. I'm sure you're similar to me, but most films I won't leave until the credits finish.
Yeah, same here.
and this is a classic example from growing up of why I don't leave until the credits finish, because you have that phenomenal sunset scene where they're riding off in on the horses, which is again the perfect visualization of this is the Last Crusade, this is the last Indy movie. You know, the journey is done. But the wonderful John Williams score.
Oh God, yeah.
Just you sit there
John
in cinema. Yeah.
little bit of comedy there with Marcus and the horse. Right at the beginning, and then the whole idea of like the dad, as Ian just said, that connecting with him, calling him Indiana, but they get outside and it's back to the whole we call him the Junior. Dog Indiana, and they're right back at it and stuff. But I mean, it's the perfect ending. I mean, the whole riding into the sunset, they should have just left it there.
But that was a callback to George Lucas, because George Lucas actually called his dog Indiana, and that's where he got the name for Indiana Jones. Okay. Yeah, cool. So his dog's name was Indiana. So in truth, what he was saying was true.
Yeah,
called Indiana.
And I mean, Ian has made clear this week, some of his collections he's got of movie soundtracks.
Absolutely.
And he's got Indy, and I'm sure he's got it right in front of him there. Yeah, look at that. That's phenomenal.
Indiana Jones.
I know this is true of the two of you. When I was growing up, you have the records. Because the records with the music allowed you, as you're listening, to play back the movie in your head.
Yeah.
Before we had VHS tapes.
Yeah.
Before we had DVDs. It were all memory triggers, and you could go through the whole movie in your head just listening to the soundtrack.
But that also basically triggers your imagination as well, because it's a shame, really, because a lot of kids today, they rely on their phones so much, and they talk to their friends on FaceTime, whatever, and they can speak for hours and stuff like that. But and when they talk about films, they get stressed out when they're watching films and stuff like that, and sometimes they don't have the patience to watch a film all the way through. They watch it in bits and stuff like that. But for us, we didn't have any of that stuff. By listening to a soundtrack, it brought the movie back to you. Yeah, like listening to each soundtrack, listen to certain points, especially when you look at the title and you go, "Oh, that's the scene with this." Do you know what I mean? And it sparks your imagination. So your imagination is like a muscle. If you keep feeding it, your imagination will get stronger and stronger.
Absolutely. I mean, the only thing that, bar the records that came close really in, I would say, the 80s was the novels. They would novelize movie. And sometimes they would release them before the film.
By Alan Dean Foster, inevitably.
And like the Marvel comics as well. They would like do a comics
for sure
version.
But they used to have the making of books as well. So I've got the Temple of Doom making of. It's kind of
like the kind of thin little 40-page hardbacks.
But they have real detailed ones. I've got the Alien one, the Temple of Doom one, the Raiders of the Lost Ark one, and I think it's Terminator 2. I've got. In those days, books were essential. You'd get these things, you see the pictures, you get excited and read them. Today, you just look on the internet now, and it's just.
And again, this is a nostalgia thing for me because I had it at the time, but especially Last Crusade, I remember it vividly because I was a big fan, so my parents got it for me. But I miss the times when you went to the cinema and there was a movie program you could buy.
Souvenir. It's called something Souvenir.
And they were great.
They were.
A bunch of photos.
You went home because again, you were going to wait months and months for the VHS to be released. So that with the soundtrack was your, keeping it fresh in your mind until you got that VHS for Christmas or your birthday.
I remember the first. So before the internet, there used to be Starlog and Starburst and these.
Read
about them. And I remember I read about them, and then months later, I was coming out of Waterloo Tube train station, and there was this huge poster of Indiana Jones, and it said, and I remember the tagline. It said, "He's the man with the hat is back, and this time he's bringing his dad." That's what it said on the poster, and I was so intrigued. I was like, "What? I got to see this film. I've got to see this film. Do you know what I mean? And then I started reading up on it, and then how.
Yeah, no, Starlog was my, kind of
Starlog was
guide
great.
growing up. And then when, some of the shops I went to started importing Starburst, and this was about like 3 years in. I think it started, but I loved Starburst because it had like the analytical opinion articles like John Brosnan and those things, which kind of went off, which Starlog didn't do. Starlog was mostly about the reporting, the behind the scenes, the backstage, whatever. But like Starburst would come in and you'd have these really opinionated writers who would, for good or ill, tell you, and I loved that. And so I would start buying both.
Yeah. I think also with regards to, what was I going to say about Starlog and whatnot, I think for me, I think I've said it before though, but I used to get the excitement of hearing, like I would watch Barry Norman, and watch him talk about a review of the upcoming movies, and that was all I saw. That was all I knew about something that was coming out, and there were lots of films there that I was like, whoa. And it's like, I remember seeing the trailer, he played and did a review of Big Trouble in Little China, and I was like straight away, oh, this is me all over. This is and also going back to Indy, when they released the DVD box set,
which I've got
over a decade ago.
Right there.
I always remember the trailer they did for it as well. They released a special trailer which was really well done. And I still play that every now and again.
Is that the one behind the scenes where Harrison Ford was stapling the hat to his head?
Yeah,
you ever see that one? That's the first trailer I saw. Basically, I think it was like it wasn't a real trailer. It was just basically showing you behind the scenes and a voiceover was probably William Conrad saying he's back, blah blah blah, whatever. And there's that one scene at the end where he goes click click click, goes that will do it, and then he walks off, which is quite a nice little thing. It's quite funny.
And I love the teasers that are thankfully on my Blu-rays, where the early teasers, which is just like a minute and a half, going now filming in Nepal, in Africa, in whatever, and the line on the map, is going as Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, or Indiana Jones the Last Crusade, and that's all you needed.
That's all anybody needed.
But also, even as a kid, I didn't know as a kid many directors' names, but Spielberg, everybody knew that name. And as soon as it was announced there was a Spielberg movie coming, I was going to watch it, because everybody loved Spielberg, in the 80s. And it was just superb. But I'm going to try something different now, guys. We're going to do a Last Crusade rating, out of 10. But we're also going to do ranking this trilogy out of 10. Okay. So first of all, Gary, what would you rank the film Last Crusade out of 10, and what would you rank the trilogy out of 10? Got you. See, I love to throw people a curveball.
I'd give Last Crusade a 9. Because if I ever see the perfect film, I don't think there's any point in going on. But for the trilogy, you mean like as a whole, not each of them individually, just
not individually, just
out of 10.
Yeah, out of 10.
9.5.
Ooh,
9.5.
That's pretty high.
Yeah. Ian?
The Last Crusade 8, the trilogy 8.
Yeah.
That's. I think those are fair marks. 9 is something that's extraordinary. 10 is perfect.
10.
And there's no such thing as a perfect film.
Yeah, I would go similar to Gary. I would go 9 and 9. Purely because I just adore these films.
Yeah.
I it's comfort food for me.
Yep.
No, it's just
it's hard.
It makes me happy.
it's
these
hard,
three
these
films.
films, because it's like you can sit there and you can kind of rate it from like a technical point or a storytelling point or whatever. But with these kind of films and a lot of the other 80s films, you kind of factor in your memory of what it was like when you first saw it. So nostalgia colors the rankings and kind of boosts it up because you're reconnecting with kind of your first experience of it, which always heightens it.
Yeah.
It does.
And it's again similar to what you said, Ian.
Mm.
At the beginning, I have seen films in the last sort of 5 to 10 years, and I've never gone back to them.
Yeah.
Whereas these are films that I were done in the 80s, and I go back to them. I can't even count how many times I've watched these films now because it's so many.
Well, I think it's because we were, look, I hate to say this, but we were there when cinema was at the top of its game. Films, 90s and 80s, and even the early 2000s, they were really well done, very entertaining. But kids of today, young children of today, or even people in their 20s, they have not experienced what we've experienced when it goes to the cinema because of the films are not so good. Like, for instance, I'll give you an example, right? So the girl that's playing Rebecca Gold in Rebecca Gold, the character is a geeky character and she knows like Star Wars, whatever. So there's a scene in it where she says, talks about Star Wars. And her psychiatrist says, Star Wars, I've never seen it. And I remember before we did the scene, I said to Ella, have you seen Star Wars? She said, no. So like I tease her every time I see her. Have you seen Star Wars? No. Do you know what I mean? So it's a different world for them, right? They'll never ever experience what we experience, being so excited to go to cinema, the popcorn, the drink, the people screaming. I remember in Temple of Doom when the cart, the tracks ran out and it flew and it landed. I remember the audience just, it was incredible. It was like a bomb went off. They were screaming with laughter.
Yeah.
People were chucking popcorn in the air and punching their fists in the air and stuff like that. And the old people in the crowd was just killing themselves laughing. They'll never experience that. You know why? Because today's films do not have that kind of entertainment.
No.
And you think about it, this Indiana Jones Last Crusade was summer of 89. What else was in summer of 89? You had the Batman, first Batman, Tim Burton. You had I think, well, say what you will about it, Ghostbusters 2.
Yeah, you had Lethal Weapon.
You had
Lethal
Weapon 2. You had Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Yeah.
You had the Bond movie License to Kill, which is one of my personal favorites.
That's good. I liked it.
You had it got kind of sidelined. You had Star Trek 5, not one of the best, but still you had a Star Trek movie out.
Yeah.
All of these, and this was just during the summer.
Yeah.
You had the Abyss from James Cameron. All of these, it's like what a summer this was for all these movies.
But you're right as well, Gary and Ian, because from our generation growing up, the excitement you got from going to watch a film at the cinema, I don't think they have that same feeling that we had back then.
It's not at all.
There's something else they do. It's like I could speak to people, and I spoke to youngsters, and I've said, "Oh, you going up to watch?" And they'll, no, I'll watch it on my phone. But it's not that. And I don't think there's the quality of the film that really gives them the buzz to go up there and pay the cost.
But the thing is, though, to be fair, it's their world, and if this is the way they enjoy entertainment, this is the way they enjoy entertainment. Like it's their choice at the end of the day, right? I'm sad that cinemas are closing down and people don't appreciate films in the movies. People are struggling, like what's his name who made Metropolitan, whatever it's called. Coppola. He's struggling to do what he done 20 years ago, but it's not going to work because the audience is not there anymore. People like us, that's the reason why cinemas are putting, like, Star Wars is out today in the cinema. Do you know what I mean? That's why they're putting out the old films, because they're talking to us. They're going, we need more money. See Star Wars on the big screen, guys, because you've seen it. They want us to go back to the cinema, but aiming for the new generation is just not working. It's not working.
And I mean, for me, when I think about going to all these movies, like I said, for like that summer, it's not just like sitting there watching the movie. It's the fact that when you get your ticket, you like stand in a long line outside. Maybe there was 4 to 5 lines for 4 to 5 different movies. And you go into the lobby and it's packed and there's a buzz and all the posters and the standees for all the movies. And you wanted to see every single one. So you're already thinking about like not the movie you're there for, but all these other ones that you want to see. And all of that just adds to the, memory of it all.
Yeah, and excitement as well. I mean, they have today's generation has too much access to everything. I mean, a 7-year-old can go on his phone, and I hate to say this, he can watch porn, if he knows what to do. So that's what I'm saying. It's they have too much access to too much stuff. I mean, we had to wait when Indiana Jones was released in America. We had to wait 4 months before it came to the UK.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So it's the waiting and the anticipation. And it delivering as a movie, a good movie. That's what made it all exciting for us.
I mean, I've got obviously we'll ask you to talk about Rebecca Gold and your channel in a minute, Ian, as well, and also where we can find you, Gary. But I was going to say, with Star Wars being back in the cinema, what I want you to do is to tell Ella that you're going to do a Rebecca Gold scene in a cinema and then force her to watch Star Wars.
No, it's just, as I said, it's just again, I think I've said this in another stream. I was watching with my niece, because I love my nieces. They come around and stay and all that. So I always try and pick a film for Jamie to watch. And the 2 films that she saw, the 2 times she came over, one was Sixth Sense, and she cried all the way through it, and obviously scared for it. And the bit where the kid says, I see dead people, she's like, oh, so that's where that's from. And we're watching Spider-Man 2, and Jonathan J. Jameson goes, are you serious? And starts laughing, and she's like, oh, that's where that came from.
That's funny.
So they experience it differently to us. Because this is a different world now.
Absolutely. And I mean, that was our review of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and obviously our review of the trilogy. So let us know in the comments what your thoughts are. But Gary, great to have you with us again.
Thank you. This has been great.
Tell us where else you can be found on.
I can be found
the tube
on,
of you.
I can be found on. You'll find me in the Type 40 chat. I'm always there for the chats. Occasionally, lucky enough to be on some of the
King of the puns
Type 40s. You can find me on Facebook under either Gary Akers or Retrodoc, and on this great channel.
There you go.
Yep. Thank you. Ian, tell us about where you could be found, and tell us about Rebecca Gold as well.
Well, Rebecca Gold, you can just find Rebecca Gold on YouTube. Just type in Rebecca Gold and you'll find it. I'm on X, I'm on Facebook and Instagram. So, I mean, you can connect me there if you want. I haven't got much to say, really. Let's face it. Don't expect anything.
Also, whatever.
Ian never says anything. Everybody.
Also, for anybody watching this, whatever your favorite, movie thing of choice is, whether Hulu or whatever, do a search for Ian David Diaz.
There you go.
You'll find great films by this gentleman there on those platforms.
Yeah.
So give those a watch.
Yeah. Do it. And until next time, everybody, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again soon. Take care of yourselves.
Ta-da.